is up, everybody? Welcome to the first installment of what will hopefully be a new, fresh series here we're going to call John Watches Stuff. And this is going to be exactly that. We're going to follow a unique format here where I'm going to talk a little bit about the movie I'm about to watch, and then we're going to cut the video, and then I will come back after the fact and review the movie. So, for our first installment, we have a really interesting... Well, I really shouldn't say because I don't really know that much about the movie, just what the marketing has said. But we're looking at a Pixar film that just came out very recently, and recently got really screwed over by reality circumstances. You all know what movie I'm talking about. This movie's Onward. So, a lot of people know I am a huge, huge Pixar fan. I have seen basically all of their films up to this point, except this one we're about to watch. And the unique thing is that I have seen every Pixar film in theaters. I've kept a perfect streak since 1995 up until Onward. I actually had every intention of seeing this movie in theaters. It obviously just didn't work out, but March just happened to be a really busy month for me when this movie came out. And I actually had every intention on seeing it at the very end of March, but the theaters shut down before I could see it. And a lot of people have a gut feeling that whenever the theaters reopen, Onward probably won't be playing because the film has basically been dumped onto streaming services already. And the Blu-ray release was actually, I believe, just announced the day I'm recording this video. It is coming out in mid-May. So, I mean, theoretically, I think it's actually possible. My whole logic is that, let's assume the theaters reopen, no films are really scheduled yet. So, like, let's assume early June theaters reopen. It's probably not going to be the case, but we'll assume that. I'm just in the logic of, what do you show when your theaters reopen? Because you're not going to have any movies that have set release dates show what you were showing right when the theater's closed. So, I'm not holding my breath for that. I would like to see this movie in the theater, provided I like it. But I'm thinking that that 24-year streak that started with Toy Story is going to come to an end. But, now let's move on to Onward itself. The trailers for this movie, I don't feel like anyone was really crazy about it to begin with. Usually when Pixar does two films in one year, like supposedly is the plan for this year, one is very average and the other is really fantastic. And everyone was pointing to Onward as being the film that was probably going to be a little average. The trailers, it feels very DreamWorks-y to me, and... you know, I really don't know what to expect, but the really interesting thing that stands out to me about this film is, aside from the fact that Chris Pratt and Tom Holland are in a Pixar film that's underperforming due to screwy circumstances, is that this film is very much the first film of the new era for Pixar, because pretty much since Toy Story, and even before Toy Story, Pixar was in the reign of Mr. John Lasseter, who, for all the good things he did, was kind of revealed to be a bit of a perv. So he was kicked out, and J.J. Abrams took pity on him and let him run his animation studio that we don't really know anything about, except Emma Thompson was not happy to work for Lasseter. But in the wake of that, Pete Docter, who is by far one of the best people at Pixar, he directed Monsters, Inc., he directed Up, he directed Inside Out, he directed Soul, which is coming out hopefully very soon. He was recently promoted to Chief Creative Officer after Lasseter resigned. And I just find it interesting that the Lasseter era of sorts ended with Toy Story 4. And, you know, that all those films before then, all those films are going to speak for themselves. All of them are, for the most part, very good. Cars 2 sucks. Brave isn't that great. Good Dinosaur and Cars 3 are kind of ho-hum. But for the most part, that's a good roster of films otherwise. Pete Docter obviously has Soul coming out. The expectations are high for that. And Onward is really kind of the first stab in that new era of Pixar. So we really don't know where this is going. Because of the original kind of crew of directors of Pixar, Lasseter's gone. Pete Docter's probably not going to be doing films as often as he used to. Andrew Stanton is directing episodes of Stranger Things because he's convinced he still has a live-action directing career. Brad Bird, what does Brad Bird even do? Honestly, he's a fantastic director, but I feel like after Tomorrowland, he's just kind of been falling off the rails a little bit mentally. Incredibles 2 was great, but he doesn't really seem to have a clear path at this point, which is weird. And who else is there? Lee Unkrich, who directed Toy Story 3 and Coco, he left Pixar right after Coco came out. I kind of think it had something to do with the Lasseter allegations. I don't know. But, you know, for me, the big thing about this movie is seeing where this new path for Pixar goes. So, I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to turn on Disney Plus and watch this movie. And I'm going to be back with you guys in an hour and 42 minutes to give you my thoughts on Onward. Okay, so that was Onward. So, for Pixar's first film of the 2020s, definitely the first Pixar film of this new era. It was actually pretty cool seeing Pete Docter's name in the executive producer credit in lieu of John Lasseter. So, right off the bat, yeah, it's pretty good. It's really pretty good. I'm really hard-pressed to call this Pixar's best. It is a far cry from the really great films, but it is probably a little better than Cars. I'd probably put it even with Cars, and that's really in the good, not great pile. But, anyway, so I'm not going to go really into the plot specifics of the film and everything. I am going to talk about specific scenes, so be aware there are spoilers for this film, in this video, rather. Very first time doing this. Okay, so you're gonna have to get past a lot of really generic stuff in this movie. Because at this point, the Pixar cliches are pretty commonplace, sort of the world building they do. And this fantasy world that they're setting up is really kind of generic. It starts off as sort of this very Tolkien-esque atmosphere, and then they sort of modernize that. And I can't really specify movies that did this before, but I do feel this whole thing felt very familiar in the setup. But the thing that I really like about this movie is that it kind of really defies your expectations to some degree. You know, it's still kind of predictable, but the way they set things up at the beginning of the film and kind of elaborate them and play with perception a little bit is really interesting. So, the thing I really want to talk about really are the two main characters, Ian, voiced by Tom Holland, and Barley, voiced by Chris Pratt. Goddamn. Okay. So, these characters are definitely very much exaggerated animated versions of Peter Parker and Peter Quill. You know, that's just the way these characters are. Ian is a lot more neurotic, but he does have the teenage boy awkwardness for most of the film. And Barley is this very loud, very boisterous, very Star-Lord-esque character who's so knowledgeable of the things of the past. But, you know, I'm not going to lie, for the first 45 minutes or so, Barley wasn't necessarily annoying, but, you know, the exaggeration was just kind of a cycle that felt a bit much in this movie. But as the film progressed, you know, they really show that this character really is insecure, and he has to make sacrifices, and there's two scenes in particular that stand out in that regard. The first scene is closer to the climax when Barley sacrifices his van, which he calls Guinevere, and It's a scene that's played for comedy to a degree. He plays this sort of Van Halen style music in the cassette player in the car when he's rolling it off to do what they have to get cops away from them. But at the same time, it really is a moment where you go, oh, they actually did that. You know, it was a very nice surprise. And the scene later on in the film, which is probably the scene everyone's talking about, is the ending, which is very powerful. It's a very nice moment because the plot of the film basically, you know, they're trying to get their father back for the day, trying to do the spell and everything. And spoiler time, in the end, Ian doesn't get to see his father really. He sees him from a distance. There's a really nice scene where Barley explains that when their father was dying, he didn't want to say goodbye because he was so frightened by seeing him covered in tubes in the hospital. And it's a really nice moment. So there's a whole battle thing. It's kind of nonsense, the whole battle with the dragon thing. I wasn't really crazy about that. But Ian has to be the one to kind of defeat the dragon. So he says, you go say goodbye to Dad. You didn't get to say your goodbye when you were a kid. I will fight the dragon. This isn't about me. It's about you. And for who really was a comic relief character for most of the film, for it to really be about their relationship, that was really surprising to me. Because Ian kind of comes to terms through the movie that it doesn't matter that he didn't know his father, because to some degree, Barley was his father figure. And when he comes to that realization, it's a really nice moment. And you can really go back and piece it together in the film, and it's just really sweet, really endearing. So a lot of the genericness of this film is really overridden to some degree by that relationship, and I found that really nice. You know, it's not a fantastic film. Kids 5 years from now won't be going around quoting Onward, but for what it's worth, as a nice filler film from Pixar to warm us up for Soul whenever that comes out, I really enjoyed this. And one more thing I did want to acknowledge was, I know there's some sort of controversy about a lesbian fantasy character who is a cop. So I figured that out. There's a scene where Ian and Barley disguise themselves as a cop character to speak to another female cop. And this cop they disguise themselves as is dating their mother. So they're saying something like, oh, the kids, we don't know what to do with them. And then this one cop, they're both female. One of the cops goes, yeah, I'm dealing with my girlfriend's kids, they're the same way. And the first time she said that, I thought, oh, well, you know, I know people, females who refer to their friends as girlfriends. So it took me like 10 seconds to realize, oh, this is the lesbian character. So, yeah, people are going to interpret that any way they will. Who cares? You know, if this is detering your enjoyment of a movie, you need help. But anyway, Onward is a very good film otherwise. It's a good atmosphere film. On the generic side, obviously. But, you know, it's typical Pixar. It's very, very typical Pixar. And if you like typical Pixar, you will like this movie. So, on that note, I'm going to call this an end on Onward. So, the next video, I don't know what movie it's going to be. I'll pick something, because there is clearly plenty to choose from. And for now, I will say Onward gets a solid recommendation. So, peace out, everybody. I will see you next time.